Hi friends, it's Sienna Willison with Our Blooming Catholic Life. I was cleaning up the books around here as I was preparing our next Cozy Through the Cross episode. And what values in a time of upheaval? This looked like a book I should just pick up and review. I think you're going to admit, at least the title is going to draw you in, right? Let's jump in. It says it was a worldwide bestseller written by Joseph Ratzinger, later known as Pope Benedict XVI. He passionately defended the role traditional Judeo-Christian values should play in a pluralistic society and a multicultural world. He examines such crucial contemporary issues as the moral foundations of a free society, the role of spiritual values in promoting human rights, current challenges to Western culture, and the place of faith and love of God in finding true peace. It says he proposes a balance of faith and reason that avoids the extremes of fundamentalist theocracies and secular relativist states. The topics in here include politics and morality, peace, the meaning of history, truth in a pluralistic world, the moral basis of democratic states, relativism, human dignity, the Christian basis for hope, bioethics, freedom, human rights and responsibilities, marriage and the family, tradition and progress. This book was published by Ignatius Press. Let's jump in here. When was it published? It was copyrighted in 2004 under a German name. It says the original German edition was copyrighted 2005. That does not make super sense to me, but anyway, there we go. The English language edition was published by Crossroad Publishing Company and Ignatius Press in 2006. This book was printed in the United States of America. It is set up basically as, well, mostly as you would a paper. So it does start out with a preface. See how you jump to the middle for part 1, which is done in all capital letters to let you know what it is, and then Roman numerals, part 2. It's nice here that you can see that. It's a lot of numbering. I'm surprised they didn't switch to like alphabet letters or something, so you're going to have to pay attention to whether it's the parts are using Roman numerals. Everything else is using Arabic numerals, so that's a little bit confusing, but these are the page numbers and these are the section numbers. Let's see what they are. So part 1 is what rules should guide our conduct. And then it says underneath politics and morality. Part 2 is responsibility for peace. And under that it says orientations. Part 3 is what is Europe, foundations and perspectives. There's an epilogue, belief in the triune God and peace in the world. Note on publication of the essays in this book. Note on the first publication of the essays in the book. Let's go back and look what the little sections are then. The little chapters. To change or to preserve. What keeps the world together? Freedom, law, and the good. What is truth? If you want peace, searching for peace, what must we do? Acting in the strength that comes from remembrance. Europe's identity, and common will. Let me take a drink quick and we'll look at the preface. Europe has once again become one of the great topics in public debate about our present and our future. The struggle to elaborate a European constitution, the eastward expansion of the European Union, the question of whether Turkey, a state conscious throughout its history of being a counterfoil to Christian Europe, thanks to its own cultural and religious foundations, should be accepted as a member. All these issues confront us with fundamental questions. What are, in fact, the foundations on which we live, what supports our societies and holds them together? How do states discern their moral basis and consequently also the forces that motivate them to moral conduct, forces without which a state cannot exist? How do we locate ourselves in Europe in the global situation, in the tension between North and South, in the tension between the great cultures of humanity, or in the tension between a technological, secular civilization, and those ultimate questions which it can afford no answer? These questions took on a new form with the fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989. In the years since then, I've often been invited to lecture and take part in discussions on these subjects. The essays in the book were written in response to these invitations and deal with a variety of themes. I hope that they may form a mosaic that points to the direction to take. Much in the book is a mere sketch, more question than answer. But perhaps it is precisely the incomplete character of the essays that may provide a spur to further thinking on these subjects. I am grateful to Dr. Rudolf Walter of the Herder Publishing House for suggesting the collection of these texts. The order of the essays and the overall structure in which they are presented here is the work of the publisher. Easy to see when a new section starts, right? The big parts. Easy to see when a chapter starts. On the first page of the chapter, the numbering is in the bottom center. Afterwards, it is in the upper outside corner. Now, what is on these headers? To change or to preserve. Okay, so each of the actual chapters has both a regular print and an italics print, right? So this will end up on the left-hand page and this will end up on the right-hand page. See? So it's not the section, it's the actual chapter, the heading and subheading of each specific chapter. Now let's look a little bit more. There are subsections within there. Easy to see. That was pretty easy to jump out at you, right? Do see... Yep. There's some scripture references that are done in parenthetical. I'm trying to see if there's any footnotes or anything here. They are footnotes when they occur. Footnotes at the bottom of the page. Again, the academic format, standard academic format where it's in smaller print. So just be aware of that if you are someone who loves footnotes. I think that's really all to pull up there. Let's go ahead and just pick a page and read a sample. Let's go ahead. I'm on page 13. It says, let us attempt to move from this snapshot of one way of understanding the essential task of politics onto rather a more fundamental level. Behind the alternative that we have glimpsed somewhat unclearly in the antithesis between the titles Conservator and Salvator, we can in fact discern two different visions of what political and ethical conduct can and ought to do. Here it is not only the relationship between politics and morality that is viewed differently, but the interlocking of politics, religion, and morality. All have the static vision that aims to conserve. It is seen perhaps most clearly in the Chinese understanding of the universe. The ordering of the heaven, which always remains the same, prescribes the standards for behavior on earth too. This is the Tao, the law of existence and reality that human beings must recognize and that must govern their conduct. The Tao is both a cosmic and an ethical law. It guarantees the harmony between heaven and earth, and thus also harmony in political and social life. Disorder, the disturbance of peace and chaos, arise where people resist the Tao, living in disregard of it or even in opposition to it. In response to such disturbances and destructions of societal life, the Tao must be reestablished so that the world can once again be livable. The vital issue is to remain aware of the constant ordering of things, or to return to it if it has been abandoned. The Indian concept of dharma expresses something similar. This term designates cosmic as well as ethical and social ordering to which human beings must adapt if life is to be led aright. Buddhism relativized this vision, which is at the same time cosmic, political, and religious, by declaring the entire world to be a cycle of suffering. Salvation is not to be sought in the cosmos, but by departing from it. But Buddhism did not create any new political vision, since the endeavor to attain salvation is non-worldly, oriented to nirvana. No new models are proposed for the world such as this. The faith of Israel takes a different path. In the covenant with Noah, it does indeed recognize something akin to a cosmic ordering and the promise that this will be maintained. But for the faith of Israel itself, the orientation to the future becomes ever clearer. It is not that which abides perpetually, a today that is always the same, that is seen as the sphere of salvation, but rather a tomorrow, the future that has not yet arrived. The book of Daniel, probably written in the course of the 2nd century before Christ, presents two great theological visions of history that were to play a very significant role in the further development of political and religious thinking. Whew, that's that great statue imagery. So here we have Cardinal Ratzinger. Was he a cardinal? Yes, it says Joseph Cardinal Ratzinger. taking us through a look at world religions and how they might relate and interact so that we can have an intelligent discussion with other peoples who see the world through those lenses, which is pretty lovely. We can jump to another section, but I will say it is a problem when we try and have these theological discussions from within our American bubble and we don't understand the cultural realities of our brothers and sisters around the world, and indeed that immigrants from those countries bring with them those worldviews. And if we don't take this time to stop and listen to them and understand at least what they're saying so that we can, correct it, explain ourselves in a better way, whatever it is that we need to do in that moment to reach them. Let's look at number 5, if you want peace, and it talks about conscience and truth. Today, especially within Catholic moral theology, conscience has become the core issue with regard to morality and our discovery of what constitutes moral conduct. This debate centers on the concepts of freedom and norm, autonomy and heteronomy, self-determination and determination by an external authority. Conscience is presented here as the bulwark of freedom against those who seek to narrow our lives through the use of authority. 2 antithetical conceptions of Catholicism are proposed. On one hand, we find a renewed understanding of the essence of Catholicism that understands Christian faith on the basis of freedom and sees this faith as a principle that sets people free. On the other hand, we find a superseded preconciliar model that subjects Christian existence to an authority that issues norms to regulate people's lives, even in the most intimate spheres, and attempts in this way to maintain its power over them. It seems, therefore, that we have a conflict between 2 antithetical models, morality of conscience and morality of authority. The freedom of the Christian is safeguarded by the primal proposition of the moral tradition, that his conscience is the highest norm, and that one must follow it even against authority. When authority, in this case the Church's magisterium, speaks on matters of morality, it supplies material that helps the conscience form its own judgment, but ultimately it is only the conscience that has the last word. Some authors express this ultimately decisive authority of conscience by saying our conscience is infallible. And then, we're looking at the granddaddy of footnotes on that. It is almost a half a page because, will people be up in arms about that? So if you are interested in the writings of Joseph Cardinal Ratzinger, you may want to look at this and his arguments of values in a time of upheaval. God bless you, friends.